Something is screaming in the Basin of South Carolina, and it isn't an alligator. The humid silence of the low country has been permanently broken by a low-frequency vibration that rattles window panes and sends household pets into fits of uncontrollable terror. This is not a local legend or a ghost story told over campfires. This is a profound biological shift that has turned the Blackwater swamps into a territory where humans are no longer the apex of the food chain. The red-faced invaders have arrived, bringing with them a primitive, terrifying intelligence that defies our understanding of the natural world. The transformation began in the sweltering summer of 2027. Initially, the reports were dismissed as the hallucinations of heat-stricken crabbers or the exaggerations of tourists. They spoke of large, auburn-furred shapes moving with unnatural speed through the Spanish moss. They described faces that looked uncannily human but were distorted, dominated by massive, pendulous noses that seemed to pulse with every breath. By the time the Department of Natural Resources realized they weren't dealing with escaped exotic pets, the population had already established a stronghold in the most inaccessible reaches of the Combahee River. These are not the shy, leaf-eating Proboscis monkeys found in the dwindling forests of Borneo. Something in the transition across the globe, or perhaps the unique chemical makeup of the Carolina marshlands, has triggered a rapid evolutionary pivot. These creatures have grown larger, standing nearly 5 feet tall, with a lean, predatory musculature. Their once ruddy fur has darkened to a deep, mud-stained ochre, allowing them to vanish against the cypress bark and the murky water. Their most striking feature, the long, bulbous nose, has evolved into a sophisticated biological tool. It is no longer just a secondary sexual characteristic. It is a resonance chamber capable of producing sounds that defy the laws of the natural world. The biology of these troops is a masterclass in swamp survival. Their feet and hands have become more heavily webbed, allowing them to glide through the tidal creeks with the silence of a water moccasin. While most primates avoid deep water, these colonial invaders embrace it. They have been observed staying submerged for minutes at a time, using their long, flexible noses like biological snorkels to track movement on the banks without ever breaking the surface. Their eyes, once a soft brown, have taken on a reflective, predatory glint that catches the moonlight in shades of pale amber, optimized for hunting in the thickest coastal fog. The true weight of the invasion lies in their vocalizations. It begins as a deep, rhythmic honking. A sound so resonant it feels like it's coming from inside your own chest. Biologists studying the few recordings available have noted that the monkeys use their noses to create a wall of infrasound. This low-frequency noise doesn't just warn off rivals. It physically disorients other mammals. Exposure to these sounds causes a rapid onset of vertigo, nausea, and a sense of impending doom. In the dense fog of the low country, a person can be surrounded by a troop of 50 monkeys and never see a single one, feeling only the crushing weight of the sound as it scrambles their sense of balance. The social structure of these troops is remarkably aggressive. They move in highly coordinated units, often led by an alpha male whose nasal appendage is so large it must be supported by developed chest muscles. They don't hunt with the frantic energy of a chimpanzee. They hunt with the cold, calculated patience of a reptilian predator. They have learned the patterns of the local residents. They know when the fishing boats return to the docks. They know which porch lights flicker out at midnight. They wait in the branches of the live oaks, their heavy noses swinging like pendulums, watching the world below with a chilling, detached curiosity. The first major escalation occurred at a remote research station near Hilton Head. Ranger Mia Harper was tasked with documenting the spread of what the government then called the nasal anomalies. Her logs, recovered weeks later, paint a picture of a woman being systematically stalked by an intelligence she couldn't comprehend. She wrote about the smell, a thick, musky scent of wet fur and rotting fruit that seemed to permeate the air even when the wind was still. She noted that the monkeys weren't just eating the local vegetation, they were clearing it, creating sound corridors through the swamp to amplify their calls. Harper's final radio transmission remains a haunting piece of local history. It wasn't a cry for help, but a whispered observation of a predator's strategy. She described how the monkeys had begun to mimic the sounds of the swamp, the croak of a bullfrog, the splash of a leaping mullet, only to follow them with that soul-crushing, resonant honk. Her voice was steady until the end, when she realized the boat she was on was being slowly circled by dozens of snorkels cutting through the water. She wasn't being attacked, she was being harvested from her environment. The boat was found drifting, empty, with nothing but wet, hand-shaped mud smears along the hull. As the population grew, the traditional ecology of South Carolina began to collapse. The alligators, once the undisputed kings of the Blackwater, found themselves outmatched by the troops' collective intelligence. The monkeys worked together to lure the reptiles into shallow mud before using their superior reach and weight to overwhelm them. The deer populations have fled inland, leaving the coastal marshes to the auburn bird shadows. The very atmosphere of the low country has changed. The air feels heavier, charged with the constant vibrating tension of 1,000 hidden lungs preparing to scream. Local communities have been forced to adapt to a reality that feels like a fever dream. Curfews are strictly enforced in waterfront neighborhoods. The sound of a car horn or a boat engine is often met with a retaliatory chorus from the trees, a deafening, synchronized honk that can shatter glass and leave residents clutching their ears in agony. There's a psychological toll to living in the shadow of a creature that looks like a mockery of a human being. The red faces, the bulbous noses, and the way they stand upright on the marsh banks at dusk, watching the highways with unblinking eyes, has created a climate of pervasive dread. There are reports that the monkeys have begun to display even more unsettling behaviors. Some residents claim to have seen them manipulating simple tools, using heavy branches to block drainage pipes and flood residential streets, turning backyards into extensions of their swamp territory. Others speak of the gathering, a phenomenon where hundreds of monkeys congregate on the beaches under a full moon, standing in perfect silence, their noses pointed toward the Atlantic as if waiting for a signal from the depths. They are not merely surviving, they are terraforming. The authorities have stopped trying to eradicate them. The terrain is too difficult, and the monkeys are too elusive. Every attempt to trap them results in the traps being dismantled or, more disturbingly, baited with the remains of local livestock. The state has quietly reclassified large swaths of the AC Basin as restricted biological zones, a polite way of saying that the land now belongs to the troops. The maps of South Carolina are being redrawn, not by rising sea levels, but by the territorial boundaries of a primate that was never supposed to be here. The physical presence of the monkeys is now an inescapable part of the landscape. When the fog rolls in from the ocean, thick and white like a shroud, it carries the scent of the invaders. You can hear them moving through the canopy, a heavy, rhythmic crashing of branches that stops the moment you look up. They are masters of the near miss, letting themselves be seen just for a second, a flash of a red face or a long, swinging nose before vanishing into the gray. It is a psychological war of attrition, designed to remind the human population that they are the guests in this new, humid kingdom. At night, the residents of Beaufort and Charleston lock their doors and pull their curtains tight. They try to ignore the rhythmic thumping that occasionally hits the sides of their houses. They try to ignore the way the Spanish moss seems to twitch even when there is no breeze. But the sound is the one thing they cannot escape. That deep, resonant vibration that starts in the mud and rises through the floorboards. A sound that says the swamp is no longer a place of beauty or recreation. It is a nursery for a new kind of power. The Proboscis monkeys didn't just survive their arrival in the Low Country. They thrived in a way that suggests they were uniquely adapted for this exact environment. The heat, the humidity, and the labyrinthine waterways provided the perfect canvas for their predatory evolution. They have become the guardians of the fog, the kings of the pluff mud, and the architects of a new, terrifying ecosystem. They don't need to speak to communicate their intent. Every honk, every splash in the dark, and every amber-eyed stare from the cypress knees carries the same message. Consider the implications of a species that can weaponize sound. We are used to predators that use claws or teeth, things we can see and defend against. But how do you fight a sound that makes your heart skip a beat? How do you protect your home from an intelligence that understands how to use the terrain better than the people who have lived there for generations? The monkeys have turned the geography of the South against its inhabitants, using the very fog and water that define the region as their primary tools of concealment and attack. If you find yourself driving through the coastal backroads after the sun has dipped below the horizon, keep your windows up. If the air suddenly turns cold and the smell of the swamp becomes overwhelmingly thick, do not slow down. If you see a shape on the side of the road that looks like a man, but with a face that is wrong, a face that is too red and a nose that is too long, do not look into its eyes. And if the silence of the night is broken by a sound so deep it makes your teeth ache, remember that you are in their home now. The Low Country has surrendered. The boats have stopped running the tidal creeks, and the boardwalks are being reclaimed by the salt marsh. The screaming in the night isn't a plea for help or a territorial dispute. It is a victory lap. The red-faced invaders have found their sanctuary, and they have no intention of leaving. They are waiting in the mist, breathing through the blackwater, watching and learning. South Carolina is no longer the place you remember. It belongs to the resonance. It belongs to the nose. It belongs to the troop. Beyond the physical danger, there is a deeper, more existential dread settling over the region. It is the realization that nature is not a static thing, and that our place at the top of the ladder is far more precarious than we ever imagined. We brought the world closer together through trade and travel, never suspecting that we were providing a bridge for a nightmare to cross. The Proboscis monkeys of South Carolina are a living testament to the fact that evolution doesn't always move in a direction that is favorable to humanity. Some say that on the quietest nights, when the moon is high and the tide is out, you can hear a rhythmic thumping coming from deep within the restricted zones. It's not the sound of animals fighting, it's a synchronized beat, like a drum line. There are theories that they are communicating across vast distances, linking the disparate troops into a single cohesive network. If they are learning to coordinate on a statewide scale, then the occasional flooded backyard or stolen livestock is just the beginning. For now, the residents of the coast live in a state of uneasy truce. They stay in the light, and the monkeys stay in the dark. But the dark is growing. Every year, the sightings move a little further inland, a little closer to the city centers. The auburn fur is seen in suburban gardens. The red faces are caught on doorbell cameras in the middle of the night. The humming of their noses is becoming the background radiation of life in the Low Country. We often think of an invasion as a sudden, violent event. But the most successful invasions are the ones that happen slowly, one tidal creek at a time, until you wake up and realize the world has changed while you were sleeping. The air is thicker now. The water is darker. and from the branches of the ancient oaks, 1,000 amber eyes are watching, waiting for the sun to go down so they can begin their song. In the end, it may not be the sound that breaks us, but the silence that follows it. The silence of a swamp that no longer has any birds, any alligators, or any human voices. Only the heavy, rhythmic breathing of a troop that has finally found its throne in the mud. The low country has shifted. The resonance is here to stay, and the red faces in the fog are the last thing many will ever see. Stay away from the edge of the water. Don't listen too closely to the hum. And above all, never answer the honk in the dark.